All right, let's come back together from our break. Students, if you are here, please turn your cameras back on or give a thumbs up. Lets me know that you're back. Okay, fantastic. All right, and so for our next session and our final session of the day for core sessions, we are very lucky to have Anna Schufelt here with us from Duke Personal Finance. And Duke Personal Finance is an office or program on campus that helps Duke students and actually also alumni, so you can still use them after, but you're a little far away from that. So right now, as students, to gain knowledge and information about essentially personal finance. And so we're starting off kind of giving you some information about how to manage your finances and budget your finances for your first year at Duke. All right, so please, let's give our attention to Anna. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that fabulous introduction. Yes, my name is Anna Schufelt, and I do work in the Office of Student Loans and Personal Finance. Maybe not everybody's favorite topic, but certainly one that I think we can all agree on at one point or another, like it or not, we have to think about. It is an aspect of our lives, and the more information we have at our disposal, the more confident, the more empowered we can be when it comes to making decisions. Whether that is decisions about budgeting, which is going to be kind of our focus for today, or whether that's decisions around, again, other personal finance topics, borrowing student loans, building credit for the first time, just really wanting to kind of plant that seed that's really kind of the focal point of our office. Again, whether you're a student or an alum, we recognize that finances are so intertwined in a lot of the experiences we have. Again, not just our time at Duke, but again, as human beings, just kind of navigating this world and the society. So keep in mind, whatever it is that you come across during your time at Duke or when you leave our Blue Devil community as a proud alum, and we're happy to speak to those wide array of personal finance topics. Again, kind of taking that broad scope that we can speak to and narrowing it in a little bit on what really we're going to be speaking to today, primarily thinking about student expenses and how to start preparing and planning for navigating your money when you come to campus. We'll kick things off with a small icebreaker. Not really sure how much of y'all you've been doing that today. Promise you, your first couple of weeks on campus, you're going to do a lot of icebreakers. So for my introverts, because this one's probably going to be done via chat, it should be not too overwhelming, but again, icebreakers are kind of the norm at college, I have found. After we sort of, again, kind of just come to some common ground together, we're then going to transition into the primary focus of today, which is budgeting. I would say for most financial educators, budgeting just ends up being that first step that really kicks off the rest of your personal finance planning and journey. And then finally, we really want to speak to a lot of those student-specific experiences that you're going to have at Duke and start to give you some proactive and creative ways to think about ways you can manage your money, ways that you can plan ahead when you undoubtedly have these questions of, okay, what do I do next, right? If at any point in time folks have questions, I'm more than happy to kind of pause throughout the session, field those through the chat. I don't know what y'all have been doing the rest of the afternoon, but if folks want to get on the mic as well, if you have that opportunity to unmute and we have some dialogue, again, I'm really open. This is y'all's time. And so again, just kind of remember, this is your space. So however it makes the most sense to start diving into this topic together, we absolutely can kind of go that way. Beatrice and Sashel, were there any other things that I am missing that y'all wanted to kind of add in, or any final notes to address before we sort of dive in?
No, I think you got it. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, again, without any other pause, we'll kind of start with that first icebreaker. And again, getting a sense of how we are feeling and what we're thinking when it comes to money. There are folks who are very money and number oriented. Talking about finances is exciting. They can't get enough of it. And there are folks who that is the last thing they would rather talk about. So again, kind of just wanting to start to think about very common feelings, very common experiences we come across in our office. So again, if y'all haven't thought about this, or if you have thought about this, just to kind of give you a chance to speak to those reflections. So again, feel free to put it in the chat, just a simple yes or no. I'm going to read off some statements. So a yes or I agree, if you can kind of relate to that statement, or a no, I don't agree. Again, if that statement doesn't relate to how you're feeling at the moment. So we'll kick things off with kind of our first statement. Statement number one, I have a good understanding of how my financial aid package at Duke works. Yeah, and so just looking at the responses, this is super common for folks, especially when it is their first time navigating a new higher education environment. I get this response not only when I'm working with first-time undergraduate students, but also with some of my first-time graduate and professional students. So recognize you are in very good company. Financial aid is super complex, and there's a lot of nuances. So if that was something that was kind of overwhelming for you, again, completely validating that experience, financial aid can be really confusing. So moving on to our next statement. All right, statement number two. I worry that I won't have enough funds to get me through all of my years at Duke. Yeah, so definitely kind of seeing a little bit more of a mix. And again, this could come from maybe really understanding your financial aid package, and having a good idea of how that looks in the long term. There are so many of our life situations, though, that are ever changing and very dynamic, and it can be really hard to sort of think, well, I don't know where I'm going to be next year. I don't know where my family's going to be next year. So it's really hard for me to think across all of my time at Duke. So again, those responses across the board, I think that is pretty normal for what we see. So again, thank you so much all for contributing your thoughts. All right, next statement. I have considered sending some of my financial aid monies back home to friends and or family. Yeah, so again, thank you all so much for your responses. One of the reasons we prompt this question is, again, this is a very real financial decision that some of the students we work with are facing. And as much as we want to support those we love, those are that in our community, the folks who have supported us, when the financial aid office at Duke is compiling your package, they're really thinking about your experience as a student. Our office tagline is your money, your choices, your future. So again, when you have these resources or income streams, again, it is up to you to make these decisions, and recognizing that these choices are all intertwined. Again, you're going to be faced with increasingly complex financial decisions as you navigate through your adulthood. So again, this is one of those real life decisions that some folks don't even realize is on the table. So it's always really interesting to kind of get feedback on that statement. So again, thank you all so much for speaking to that. All right, next statement. I'm anxious about the amount of loans I will have to borrow. Yeah, and typically when we ask this question, it's kind of more in the frame of student loans, but because there are lots of different types of loans out there, it is certainly that can start getting to even more of a rabbit hole and just thinking about borrowing in general. But again, because our office kind of has that duality around campus, not just personal finance, but student loans, this question is another one that we face a lot. And we have a lot of feedback from different types of students. Again, maybe you've looked at what your borrowing trajectory is. You have a good idea of what you want to do in your professional track, and you feel pretty comfortable about what all of that looks like long-term. And then we have other folks who go, I've really never navigated any type of borrowing before. Maybe I have a parent who's done a little, but they're not really sure either. We feel like we're kind of winging this, and I have no idea what the long term looks like. And thinking that far out stresses me out. You are in good company if that was also kind of where you were sitting. But again, student loans, kind of just with the nature of higher ed, it is a reality for a lot of individuals, but that doesn't mean it is any less stressful. So again, thank you all so much for that feedback you've provided. All right, and I believe we are to our final statement. Oops, if my forward button will cooperate. There we go. All right, I am confident in my money management skills. Good responses, folks. Yeah, I really appreciate the folks who are just like, nope, not really. I know when I was reflecting on kind of my student experience, especially coming from my household where love my mother, she's great, but she was very on top of my business. It felt like when I got to school, I was doing a lot of this for the first time. And so it was kind of like, oh, maybe I'm not as good at managing money because I don't have somebody constantly up in my business now that I'm 2 hours away. So again, for folks who are kind of either in this middle camp or are really feeling like, no, that's kind of why I'm here. Because for a lot of us, again, finances get more complex here on out. And so the more that we can start preparing as early as possible in our journey, again, some of those lessons that other folks are going to learn the hard way, we are hoping to avoid together. Because again, where we can set you up for success as early as possible is definitely a place where our office wants to join you in that journey. Again, recognizing finances are under your autonomy, but it can be really helpful to have some additional support and educational resources, again, as you are framing what you're going to do next with your financial decisions. So for folks who, again, are reflecting on these statements and are starting to feel more uncomfortable as we were going through the statements or as you were kind of just reflecting on how you feel about personal finances, I do want to share one really fantastic statistic. Not all that fantastic in terms of how it makes it feels, but fantastic in the sense that as a student, maybe I'm not so alone as I feel. There is a university close to my home state, the Ohio State University, that has done a lot of education with how students feel about personal finances and their own financial experiences. And their study has been done for several years, and they really kind of started coming away with the same takeaways year after year of doing this study, that 7 out of 10 college students are stressed about finances. I think sometimes at Duke and in that Duke bubble, we come across individuals who may not necessarily share that reality or that experience about being stressed about finances, or maybe they just feel stressed in a different way or under different circumstances. And so sometimes it can be really isolating just going through these experiences at Duke specifically. So again, for folks who are ever, who have gone through that already or who find themselves in that position at some point during your Duke experience, just take a second to remember that the Duke bubble is small and it is one aspect of the college student experience. And when we are thinking broader and what is kind of the norm of what college students go through, that's really the theme I want to leave you with, that you aren't alone. Not just in the sense of, as college students, you have increasingly complex financial situations, but probably the least access to income streams you will in your whole life. But that, again, our office is here to support as you are feeling these stresses or these anxieties around finances. So kind of that duality of just remember, you aren't alone, you have support systems out there. And so again, that's why our office is on this campus and why we love to do what we do. So we've kind of set the groundwork for some of these financial realities and pieces that for a lot of Duke students, they experience at some point or another during their time on campus. So what is the next step, right? We don't want to just sit with the stress or anxiety. We want to kind of make a plan for some really practical action steps and ways that we can start to take ownership of our finances. And so that really leads us into kind of that first foundational aspect of personal finances, creating some type of spending plan or budgeting. When you are thinking about broader financial decisions, if you don't have a good sense of the ins and outs of your money, where things are going, how you're providing for yourself, whether it's obligations or fun things, things that you, again, want to enjoy the fruits of your labor on, all of those other increasingly personal finance topics, building credit, borrowing, investing, they really aren't going to build well if that foundation of spending plans and budgeting isn't as concrete as you can possibly get it. Moreover, as students, you're going to find in a lot of instances that that foundation, again, you are laying completely by yourself, for some instances the very first time. So again, that's why we're starting here today. I would also probably add that, again, y'all haven't been college students before at Duke. And so it can also be challenging to think, well, what do I even plan for as a student? Because I've never been there. I don't really know what to think of when it comes to being a student at Duke. So again, we'll speak to a lot of that kind of from here on out with the presentation. When I am meeting with students to sort of discuss their spending plans or how they're going to budget, there's some natural steps that we typically go through together until we come up with that finalized product or that concrete plan. One of the first places to start that some folks don't really find as intuitive is to kind of review their past behavior with money, specifically tracking your dollars. Where have you been spending? What have you been spending on? I think for you all, again, being in a really unique timing wise, you're not necessarily enrolled in classes. Maybe you're trying to make the most of hanging out with friends or finalizing everything else you have to do in your hometown before moving to campus. Your spending could look a little bit more unique and maybe not necessarily be something that's super indicative of what spending will look like when you get to campus. So as you are reviewing maybe the last couple months worth of transactions, there's another layer that you can kind of bring in to start giving yourself some more insight into your financial behaviors and patterns. And that's going to be really categorizing those expenses, right? So again, we really want to dial into, we know what we've spent, but let's try to speak again some more detail into that. Am I spending mostly on needs, things that I absolutely need from a basic human living standpoint? Am I spending on those things that maybe I don't necessarily need, but again, it's bringing me joy. It's things I like spending money on. Do I have regular expenses and obligations? Do I have streaming services or subscriptions that I know, hey, even being a student, these are coming with me? And do I have any of those variable expenses, things that pop up from time to time that from a planning perspective can be even more challenging to be consistent on just because they're changing over time? I also think it's important to look for trends. Do you notice that a lot of your spending is happening online? Are you getting pulled in by Instagram ads or things you're seeing on TikTok that, again, you're looking at and going, oh, back through my purchases, I spent a lot that, again, I was kind of influenced on, maybe knowingly or not. And then timing too is a big one. I would say when folks first get to campus, there's a lot of little things that they realize, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about purchasing this. I didn't even think that this would be a need coming up in my student experience. That kind of, again, makes sense, right? Comes with the territory of moving to somewhere new and starting a new chapter. But there's other timing pieces too that can impact our financial decision making. So again, starting to think broadly of, what am I doing with time on my hands? Do I spend more when I kind of have nothing to do and my schedule's a little bit lighter? So again, really starting to give yourself that insight into not just, financial decisions that you are completely aware of, but maybe some of those more subtle subconscious pieces too that are playing a part in your financial decision making. So once we have a sense of kind of where our money has been going, then a lot of times it makes sense for folks to loop in what their income's really going to look like. Now, students and income tends to have a really unique relationship compared to any other identity or chapter that you're going to see yourself in life. Part of that comes from just the nature of the types of income students receive. In a lot of instances, you all are receiving lump sums of financial resources upfront, either at the beginning of a school year or the beginning of a semester. For those of you that are planning on working while in school, or are maybe going to have some type of side hustle where you know your income stream is going to be a little bit more regular on a weekly or monthly basis, that's definitely normal too. But I think one of the greatest pitfalls I come into play when working with students is, what do I do when I receive a huge lump sum of income upfront? So for anybody who's expecting to receive maybe a refund check from part of their aid, again, to help cover some of those non-billable student expenses, this is the big thing to hone in on. You don't want to just look at that lump sum amount of cash in your bank account and have a false sense of security. I know a lot of students who will say, man, I just got $2,000 from Duke. This is awesome. This is the most money I've had in my bank account. I can do anything. And then 2 months later, they are not feeling that same type of way, because now that amount has dwindled much quicker than they thought. And they've still got financial obligations to kind of contend to for the rest of the school year. So for folks, again, who are anticipating any kind of lump sums that they're going to be using throughout the school year, make sure you really look at that as a weekly or monthly income and not something on a lump sum basis, so that, again, you have that much more insight into what you can actually do decision-wise and financial planning-wise on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis. Now, another thing that I find really, really helpful when I am working with folks or speaking to kind of their spending plans for the month or for the school year is to start tying in some financial goals, right? We certainly have some of those expenses that we know are coming up on a month-to-month basis, whether that's groceries or a streaming service. But sometimes there are long-term financial goals, or even goals that you have a couple months coming up, that if you are not actively working towards, again, it can be really hard to balance everything that you want to do with your money. So one thing, before you really start thinking about where your money is going to go on a week-to-week or month-to-month basis, start looking towards the future. Do you have your sights set on studying abroad? And is it something where you want to start tucking away money so that when you're in another country, you can experience it to the fullest extent? Is it something where you know there's a summer where you're probably going to have to be living completely on your own and navigating an apartment or groceries for the first time? So again, start reflecting on some of those bucket list items you have at Duke, or maybe some areas of uncertainty where you want to start preparing for emergencies for, and trying to start speaking that into your spending plan as well. Now, along with those goals, we definitely have to kick in the balance of obligations and those kind of mandatory or expected expenses we have, as well as fun. There's a lot of individuals I work with who have this really interesting dynamic with their finances, where they have the money left over in their budget to spend on the things they enjoy, and they feel a little bit guilty. So again, I am definitely a proponent of prioritizing the things that you truly do enjoy and finding a way to work it into your spending plan. Maybe not all the time, but again, definitely enough to speak to those joys and values you have in your life. So again, finding that perfect balance is something that takes time, but wanting to just plant that seed now, that if this is something that you have kind of dealt with too and have struggled in that balance, or have ever struggled with that feeling of guilt, even when you have the money to spend on the fun, again, letting yourself enjoy the fruits of your labor and taking advantage of the things you enjoy is okay. And this is where, again, kind of the harder part, you put all those other steps together. That is something that I frequently do on a one-on-one basis with students. But again, that would be kind of challenging to do right now in this space altogether, since there's quite a few of you on this call. So I want to introduce a resource where you can sort of start putting these reflection steps together on your own time. There is a fantastic resource that is free to college students called Cash Course. It is a financial education platform specifically designed for folks in this unique journey of life. The particular tool I'm just going to have a couple screenshots for is called the Budget Wizard. For those of you who maybe are not Excel savvy like myself, and whenever you are trying to deal with an automated table or something, you're constantly clicking in boxes and getting errors everywhere. This takes all of that stress out of planning and looking at a budget on screen. So really nice tool that'll prompt you through different categories and what your expenses might look like. And at the end gives you a really good summary of how all of your finances are putting together. Again, I use this tool to really just help folks see what they like to spend on, what their goals are, what their expenses are, all together in one nice clean spot. We typically reflect together and review on what we see. And oftentimes it involves going back and making changes because finances are one of those things that very few folks get it right the first time. So again, the more planning and preparing and reflecting that you can do so that when you're actually in this space, you'll feel a little bit more prepared. And again, you'll have kind of already done some of this thinking ahead of time, right? So again, as students, you'll have a lot of new expenses, a lot of new freedoms for the first time that certainly can be challenging to plan for if we haven't given it some of that great foresight. Now, again, the budgeting piece is one half of it. There are some technical informational pieces that can be helpful to put all of that together. But I would say the biggest issue that folks encounter is either not being prepared for the new expenses as a student, or really not knowing ways that they can start to control these expenses or start to limit how much of an impact they're going to have on their spending plan. Before we dive into some of these really student focused tips and tricks or ways to be proactive in thinking about money, I'll go ahead and pause in case there are folks who want to kind of reflect on that spending plan exercise and reflection we went through, or if there are folks who again kind of want to add their own approach, feel free to kind of put that in the chat now. Like I said, I'll pause briefly in case there's any feedback or reflection that we all want to kind of talk about as a group. All right. Well, so far it looks like our chat is a little bit empty, which is totally fine. Again, this is a lot of information to absorb, and some of the stuff is really hard to think about until you're actually living it in the moment. So we'll transition into, again, some of these really awesome proactive ways to start thinking about major student expenses at Duke and how you might be able to limit those impacts they have or the amount that's coming through in your spending plan. Beatrice and Sashel, feel free to add in because I know we all work with a wide variety of students who have given their own stories to their pitfalls, their obstacles, things that they took away from. So again, this part I'm hoping is a little bit more conversational and that we can all kind of come together with, yeah, I've heard this is a big student expense, or hey, this is a great way to save money in this category. Because again, we all have different experiences. We all have different networks of information. So definitely use the chat, hop on the mic and kind of share whatever knowledge you have as well. So one of the, I think, pieces that gets overlooked as folks are thinking about their finances is actually the system in which they're going to be making decisions or managing money. This can be something as simple as, hey, I'm moving from a different state. Do I want to have a local bank or credit union at my disposal where I can walk and go withdraw some cash, go ask some questions about my account? This is one of those things that I did not take advantage of while in school. I was somewhat close to my hometown financial institution, but I had a lot of friends who found the convenience of being able to have some of their money management systems close to campus really, really helpful. For folks who maybe have some strong saving goals and you feel like you've been challenging with meeting those, or during school it's something you want to work towards. Sometimes even automating your system and giving yourself kind of some automatic saving deposits into a different account. Even that differentiation in your system alone can mean the difference between success and not really seeing those numbers move the way you want to. So again, reflecting on how do you currently manage money? How might that change while you get to Duke? And are there any other greater systems that you can start putting in play? Again, like automatic savings, for example, that'll just help you get that one step closer to kind of seeing your financial goals kind of come to fruition. So one thing that I typically talk to students about as we are thinking about spending, most folks are going to have two main choices when they're looking at spending plans and budgeting: cutting expenses and increasing income. Now, a lot of individuals I work with for their first year have some apprehension about taking on too much during the first semester they get to campus. And I think that is totally real, very valid. You want to know what you're embarking on. You want to get a sense of the academic rigor. You want to really immerse yourself into the community first before adding too much to your schedule. But I will say, whether your income stream looks like a side hustle or maybe a traditional student job on campus in an office somewhere, a lot of the juniors and seniors that I speak to look back on their first year at Duke and go, man, I had a lot of time that first semester, and I probably should have picked up some kind of income stream and maybe cut down my 4 naps a day to 2. And I promise you that is truly a resounding theme I've heard from a lot of folks. It may not be the case for you, but certainly consider, if I know what my expenses are going to be, I don't know if my income can cover it, are there ways where I can increase what my income stream looks like, either in a traditional or more creative way? One of the biggest expenses that we hear from students that they just really weren't anticipating was food. And reflecting back on my own college experience, I can't tell you how many times my friends and I would drive to the local Applebee's for half off apps. While we felt like we were making a good decision because we were eating everything half off, going too frequently was still adding up on my own student budget. I would say one of the concerns that's unique to Duke are using food points. And so we sort of did the math for you, looking at your dining plan options for this year. And so again, if you want to have your fall semester food points last you throughout the entire semester, going into the weeks of December where it's finals and maybe all you have time is to grab a quick bite in between studying for exams, do what you can to stick to about $7 a day on food points. I have heard from students that sometimes using your meal plan in the cafeteria options around campus gets a little old. And so I think there are some folks who dip into those food points faster than they realize. So again, having that knowledge ahead of time, if you are able to stick to that $7 a day food point on average, again, you won't come into that instance of, I don't have any other food points, and now I'm dipping into other financial resources I have to meet those food needs. Last year, Beatrice and I kind of came up with some additional food spending tips. Whether you, again, are planning on really just using the meal plans on campus, or if you find really quickly, I might be supplementing with some of the local grocery stores around campus, there are some additional ways that you can save on food spending. Downloading apps from your grocery store in the area is one really great way to do that. I personally have the apps for Food Lion, Harris Teeter, so that way I can really compare who's got the best deal. If I'm in the market for some strawberries, I'm going to go out of my way to go to the person who's selling it for cheaper, because thankfully one of the nice things about campus is that you have some major grocery stores all within walking distance from one another. So you really can be picky and get the best price available to you. Looking for sales and deals and kind of trying to match up what you plan on eating for the day or for the week on what's discounted, another great way to save on food. There are a couple folks I know who, again, will use other types of apps to compare deals. And I think, Beatrice, this was one that you had shared, was the Flip app. So for those of you who don't know, this will kind of do a lot of the comparison for store sales for you, all in one place. So again, as you find, you may not always want to use your meal plan. I think that's a normal part of eating at the same place every day, every week. But again, acknowledging that you may start to supplement with outside groceries, try to do it in, again, that creative, proactive, and smart way. One thing that I think folks too, as they are thinking about the types of food they like, foods that they want to eat to be healthy, we usually encounter questions about food waste or that experience of food waste. So again, if you are somebody who is planning ahead, maybe having some supplemental groceries on hand, or you find that you and some of your neighbors enjoy getting together and cooking once in a while. Again, make plans for what you're going to use that's fresh, that might spoil sooner, and things that again might be frozen or have a little bit of a longer shelf life. Be, again, proactive so that if you are purchasing those outside food sources, it's not ending up in the trash. I think students also get into those instances where it's been a long day of student meetings, student clubs, and classes, and the last thing you want to do is go to the dining halls or make a meal. So again, if you start to get a sense of, hey, Wednesdays are my busy days, those are the days I typically start to order out and rely on Uber Eats way too much. Again, prepackaged or frozen meals might be a really great solution long term, as they're probably going to save you more money than eating out is going to cost. And again, thinking about long-term ways to prepare meals, especially for folks who might be moving off campus, or, crossing your fingers, senior year, you're ready to get away from Duke and you're going to be experiencing more food prepping for the first time. Crock pots are one of those lifesaver maintenance meals where you can kind of throw something in and have something ready by the time you're done with classes. That thankfully, there's between DukeLIFE and just sales in stores around campus, you can usually get them for pretty cheap, and again, can really help simplify the meal planning process. I see we've gotten a couple of chats so far, which is awesome. Yeah, I love that folks have also been talking about their grocery stores, because my favorite grocery store in the South is Publix, and unfortunately there's not a Publix close to Duke. But yes, that is very real, having to get used to a new store. But like we said, Harris Teeter, Food Lion, Whole Foods all have really great options. So I really appreciate that dialogue. One thing that I also hear, oh yeah.
I was saying Ivy's asked if food points carry over to next semester.
That is a great question. I actually don't work with the meal plans too often. So if one of y'all have a little bit more insight to that, I'll kind of let you speak to that.
Yeah, I actually don't know. And so I will contact Duke Dining right after this and figure that out.
I want to say they might carry over to semesters, but not academic years, because I feel like I know a lot of folks coming April and May that, like, if they had food points left over, they want to use them so they don't go to waste. But again, don't quote me on that. Yeah. That's just, I think that's the normal system, but I feel like Duke is always doing something different.
I'll contact Duke Dining and ask. That's a great question. Thanks, Ivy.
Yeah, that is really fantastic. Along with food expenses, I would say one of the unexpected costs that I think is actually really unique to Duke and just the layout of Durham is transportation. A lot of students I've worked with have commented that when they're going back through their spending, they spend a lot more on Ubers and Lyfts than they really thought they would ever spend in their life. Sometimes that's because, there's a really awesome event going on in the community and it's a little too far to walk and you want to, again, kind of go experience that. And sometimes it's because your class is on the other side of campus, you woke up really late, and that's really your only option to get there on time. Again, just speaking to a lot of those realities of the student experience. Those pieces will come up. So do what you can to rely on public transportation whenever possible, whether that is the buses on campus that run across campus, some of the Go Durham or Go Triangle buses that in the past Duke students have also been able to use at no cost, and lots of scooter services. The scooters like Bird came to campus, I think 2 years ago now. And so for those of you who maybe are used to living in a larger city and you've seen those scooter services around, they are also going to be at Duke. And it is a great cost-effective way to get from one place to another. So again, think about some of those options too, recognizing that it can be really easy to start relying on those ride shares a little too often. Another major expense of being a student that probably you didn't experience during high school and was purchasing textbooks. There are lots of different ways where you can see some substantial financial savings on textbooks. In some instances, you can get them completely free from the library. Other instances, you can find them really cheap to rent or to purchase new, new or used. So if you haven't heard of sites like Chegg or Amazon Textbook Rental, those are going to be some other good options too if you're not able to get your textbook for free from the library. Again, there are some textbooks that, hey, that this is really going to be the academic field you see yourself going into long term. Maybe there's a book or two that you want to have on hand always. But again, there are going to be some textbooks that you really only use a couple times for that class and you never touch it again. So where you can start to figure out ways that you can save on those course materials. This was actually a tip that was provided by a couple of grad students I was working with. They were in a smaller cohort, and so it was really easy for them to establish community together. And a bunch of them decided to go in on a Sam's Club membership or a Costco membership to split that annual cost across, several of them. So maybe they were pitching in $5 instead of $60 to shop at one of these bulk stores. And then they'd go in and do kind of organized trips where they would go get all the toothpaste, all the toilet paper that the group was kind of thinking they would need for the month or for a couple of weeks, and saving on, again, some of those natural items we all need to use. But again, just trying to be more creative and look for some unique ways to save. So you all in this community, you may decide that there's a couple of y'all who say, yup, like we're going to do this. We'll invest in that Uber or that Lyft that we need to do, make a list, do some planning, and again, potentially see some financial savings through this route. One of the small silver linings of being a college student is that there are lots of opportunities for discounts specifically related to being a college student. My favorite college student discount is the Spotify membership. When I was going through school, you could get Spotify and Hulu for $4.99 a month. And when I was working on campus, that was very easy for me to include in my spending plan and in my budget. Get creative on the other types of student discounts that are out there. Do your research and ask questions, whether you're going into stores or going to restaurants. Again, there are more student discount opportunities now that you are in college, so certainly take advantage of those. You will miss some of them when you are no longer in that student role. There are going to be really amazing fun things, social outings that you want to do with the folks that you connect with at Duke. It can be really challenging to continue to say no to opportunities that folks invite you to simply because it's outside of your spending plan. So again, start to be proactive and creative. If you recognize that you and your friends like to go out into the community and do these different things, there are lots of sites that have events listed or coupons listed for different things. So again, be the one to kind of propose an idea, especially if you have a coupon or a discount around it. So I don't know if y'all have ever heard of Groupon, if you've used that site before. I have personally used that to go experience things around Durham at a really awesome discount. So again, as you're thinking about ways that you just can connect and be social with the folks you meet at Duke, it can get pricey. So planning some of those outings, again, around deals and coupons is a great way to save money. One of those other pieces that you're going to find about being social on campus, Duke itself has a lot of amazing opportunities that in most cases are completely free, and in a lot of instances are going to offer food at these events. So get used to checking out the Duke event calendar. This past school year, the events that we saw were rather limited, but as things kind of change with COVID-19 precautions and maybe start to look a little bit the way old normal kind of looked at Duke, there might be, again, some really great opportunities that are completely free to you as a student right there in your own backyard at Duke. One of the other things that I have worked with a couple students who found this really successful as they were thinking about their spending habits, they were noticing that the money that they had set aside for some of these social outings or these fun opportunities kind of started getting a little bit bigger and bigger, and they were eating into other line items or other spending plan categories than they had anticipated. And one way, again, kind of creating that system or creating that new behavior to sort of curb some of that is to use cash with your fund money. I don't know if y'all have that experience of, feeling like if you have a $20 in your wallet, it stays a lot longer than the money that's maybe on a debit card. Folks, I think this day and age are constantly swiping. And sometimes when we see that physical cash leave our hand, it triggers a little bit of a behavioral response that's different than using a debit card or a credit card. So again, that might be a solution for you to look at too. When you know that maybe $20 is your fund money allotment for the month, go ahead and get that cash out. And then when you know that $20 is gone, again, it's a little bit easier to kind of stick to some of those spending plans. And I would say by and large, some of the issues where folks encounter not being able to stick to their spending plans or going over budget happens within the context of being with friends or kind of navigating the social experience being in school. This again could be something of people wanting to go out to eat, wanting to explore the community, and they can really add up. So whether that's something where you try to be the planner in what your group outings are, or you try to communicate with your friends and just let them know, hey, I've got this financial goal. I have this plan for myself. What can we do to kind of meet that context? There may be some additional tips for you to, again, stay within those spending guidelines that you have for yourself. Coming from the Midwest to North Carolina to work at Duke, I had a pleasant surprise that the weather was much more forgiving. And there were a lot of ways that I can enjoy the outdoors, which tend to be a lot cheaper than some of the other options I was forced to consider growing up in the harsh Midwest. So lots of things around Duke and Durham specifically that you can check out. One of, I think, the best perks actually comes from the Duke Rec Center. They have some amazing equipment that you can rent for very, very cheap. That again, you don't have to go far for, you don't have to go purchase anything brand new. If you want to explore the outdoors, you want to go camping, you want some lawn games to just chill with your friends outside on any number of the beautiful parts around campus, the Rec Center has some amazing things that you get to use as a Duke student. Same with the Link, which is going to be kind of more of your tech side of stuff, but there are different droids and GoPros that you can rent also. So another really cool experience that, again, you don't have to spend a lot of money on. Getting together, hosting a potluck night or a painting night with your friends, with your roommates, with your community members. I know me and my roommates actually asked our RA to plan like a pizza party night because they had to program for our whole hall. So we kind of just planted seeds on the things that we wanted to do that came out of their residential life programming budget and not our own wallet. So you can definitely get creative there too, just kind of reaching out to the folks that, again, you work with in student clubs or in your residence halls and find ways where, again, maybe they can sponsor some of those fun things you want to do without breaking your own bank.
If I could jump in a bit, Anna.
Yeah.
I'll say that this is also one of the tremendous benefits of the DukeLIFE community, right? And so students, you heard yesterday, and we really mean it, that we want you to make friends beyond DukeLIFE. We want to make sure that you're kind of like fully taking advantage of the entire like big Duke community and having friends across socioeconomic backgrounds. But there are going to be times where maybe, some of the things that they want to do maybe kind of not within your reach at the moment, right? Maybe they want to, and this is a real thing sometimes, they want to go to Paris for spring break, something like that. And maybe you don't have it right now, right? One of the tremendous benefits also of the DukeLIFE community, come back to this community, and you have people here who, again, you can kind of be open and upfront with, and you share, some aspects of socioeconomic background, or you can say like, hey, you know what, my other friends are off doing this thing, like, what are y'all doing tonight? Let's just kind of hang out on campus from the residence hall. Let's take a walk around downtown, where you don't necessarily have to feel like, or it's a space that there's not so much of that same kind of pressure. And again, you can be kind of open about what you can and cannot afford at that moment, right? With any feelings of judgment. So I think that's one of the great kind of benefits, and why we want to make sure that you know who the other life students are for when you need, moments like that, when you can use that.
Yeah, and thank you so much to speaking. Thank you so much for speaking to that. And I think that's a great segue into kind of the last point, and something that I've also heard from students I've worked with. Your experience at Duke, you are going to have, again, some of those moments where, yeah, maybe you don't feel like you relate to what the other person next to you is saying, or there are some of those experiences that you're just like, well, I can't really do that at the moment. And so just kind of validating to yourself, really reflect on what's important to you, what you can do, what you want to do. There are going to be times where that social pressure is really real. I know one student I worked with, kind of spoke to just like for her, it was showing up and having the cutest, most fashionable outfit. She found ways to purchase that outfit at discounted prices. But that was one thing that when we worked together, she told me, that's kind of one thing I realized at Duke. I always felt like I had to dress a certain way or look a certain way when I entered the room, just knowing that maybe I couldn't relate in that area. And so that was something that, again, she kind of shared with me in her own financial experience. And so, again, recognizing those situations are probably going to happen to you at least once on campus. Take that moment to ground yourself, take that moment to come back to the Duke Life community, and to, again, just remember to you do you. It really is your personal finance journey. You're going to find some times where it's hard to juggle everything, sometimes where it's overwhelming. But again, whether you lean into the support of our office, the support of this community, or other friends that you're making on campus, just remember you can take that ownership. And again, you do you. Now, a couple final thoughts and resources I'll leave with y'all. And again, if there's time at the end, we can continue to reflect, share more tips and strategies together. But just wanted to leave you with some final resources on what you can do to continue to learn about your personal finances and prepare for kind of this new aspect of your adult journey. Our website features a lot of fantastic educational platforms, Cash Course being one of them. So again, if you wanted to create that budget wizard for yourself, fantastic place to do so. And again, that's under our resources section. I know for me personally, it helps to kind of talk things out with another person. So if this is something where you want to continue to speak on a one-on-one basis, and you can also schedule an appointment with a staff member in our office. We are transitioning to in-person meetings. So again, we'll have that opportunity to connect on a face-to-face level. But we all also recognize that folks have different comfort levels and different timing wise and schedules. So we'll still offer some Zoom calls as well. Again, really you taking that ownership and how you want to learn more about your personal finances and prepare for the upcoming school year. And the final opportunity I wanted to just mention, for the first time ever, Duke is actually offering an online personal finance course. It is Monday evenings in the fall, and I want to say it's 5:15 to 6:30. It's a half a credit. And the professor who is running the course, I went through her syllabus, and she has a lot of amazing things planned. And there is going to be a lot of learning and a lot of really cool application of financial concepts that I think when most folks are thinking about a personal finance course, it sounds really boring. But she has some really awesome spins on how she's going to help folks, again, kind of connect these really great topics that just continue to become more important as we navigate in life. So wanted to leave y'all again with that information on Econ 254. So if you have time in your schedule or you want to make a plan for it, you know that this is an option too well at Duke. So again, I'll kick it over to the chat, see if there were any other comments, but if folks also want to share or if there was anything else we could go back to and reflect on together, certainly now is that time. I think we have a couple of more minutes before I wrap up, and I think y'all are probably done for the day or pretty close to it.
What questions do you all have? Are you curious at all about kinds of things you might run into on campus around personal finance or money? Things you've heard? I'm always really curious about what you've heard. Just wanting to know resources available. Okay, some folks are asking, there's a question in the chat about some examples of side hustles at Duke. There's another question about do you know if a lot of students start a Roth IRA?
Yeah, those are fantastic questions. I would say one of the most creative side hustles that a student kind of spoke to during one of our meetings, she got into furniture flipping. You'll find that there are some seasonal times at Duke where during move out and move in, there's just a lot of things that folks are trying to get rid of, especially grad students who are maybe moving for new jobs and they're just trying to get rid of something really quickly. You can get some fantastic stuff for dirt cheap and flip it on Facebook Marketplace and see quite a nice profit. So again, that student used just kind of scouting around different apartment complexes in the area. If they had a friend who said, hey, I'm trying to get rid of something, she would take it off their hands. And again, flipping is one way that she kind of invested in a really unique side hustle for herself. I would say that probably for first year and second year students I work with, it's a little bit more common that folks will look for some on-campus employment, especially folks who have a work study award. It can be a little bit easier to find employment opportunities just because it helps employers to kind of pay for your paycheck. So I would say if you haven't looked at Duke List or Muser for student employment positions, that's a really great start. But again, outside of the furniture flipping, I know folks who have cut hair as their side hustle. I know folks who have tutored as their side hustle. So things that, again, folks were either really passionate about or really skilled at. They just found a niche and again, let folks know, hey, I was here to do it. And are quite successful. So the side hustles, again, really, really broad. And I think it's so unique hearing what folks do to kind of monetize their skill set. In terms of the investing question or the Roth IRA question, I would say even more so in recent years, we definitely are seeing students ask questions and even start to embark on some initial investing journey. Typically, most students are really in an opportunity where building up their savings for preparing for either an internship summer or a summer where they're staying at Duke and providing for themselves. Maybe they have an awesome job that they want to kind of stay in Durham for. I would say that tends to be the financial priority that just comes to a head first. Again, just acknowledging that students have kind of a short turnaround, right? You're here for 4 years and there's a lot more financial obligations and responsibilities kind of coming up. So not to say that it doesn't happen, but again, typically building up savings, emergency funds, I would say happens first, and the investing questions start to come more so from my seniors or my grad and professional students. Yeah, really fantastic question.
There's a question about, is there a counseling center for finances at Duke? If you didn't mention this already.
Yeah, so that's kind of where our office comes in. There are kind of some certain limitations in our professional scope. So for example, when it comes to like filing taxes, that's not really something we can counsel or advise on. But for things like building credit for the first time, learning more about investing, if it's something right for you, that's where our office can provide that information. So again, that's the personal finance at Duke office. I'll kind of head back to our website just so folks can kind of see what that looks like. And again, if you hit that contact us button, that's where you can kind of make an appointment.
I'll say that that's such a terrific resource to take advantage of while you're a student and while this is free for you right now, because when you graduate and this is no longer free, it costs lots and lots and hundreds of dollars, an hour sometimes, to learn, for someone to sit down with you individually and kind of talk about your personal finances and help you come with strategies for doing better, or for budgeting, or for investing, things like that, or what have you. So, such a great thing about college is taking as much advantage of all these resources you can while they're free and available to you so easily. There's no period in your life where you're going to be able to access great resources.
Yes, that is true. One question I saw we got to was kind of saving for emergencies, or again, kind of rainy days. We know it's going to happen, we just don't know when, kind of troublesome expenses. Typically, when I'm working with students, just recognizing that it's really hard to gauge what 3 to 6 months of expenses really look like, I tend to have folks consider, what if I have 2 to 3 major emergencies happen in a short turnaround, right? My laptop dies and a family member phones and says, hey, you need to come home, something's going on. Do you have, again, the emergency fund on hand to sort of tackle maybe 2 to 3 of those major life events that could come with a significant bill? So that's one way to approach it. Certainly when you get to campus and you start to get a sense of, what my normal spending habits look like, you might be able to start also building towards, hey, if I suddenly decided to part ways with my work study employment opportunity, could I still meet those obligations or expenses? But again, I think preparing for the unexpected, and really looking at, hey, if I had an emergency health bill, and again, maybe a last minute plane ticket somewhere, that's probably going to be more realistic to the financial concerns that are facing you right now. It's a really fantastic question because I get that one a lot. And then the other question we had in terms of good resources, and then one of those other free things that just comes with being a student at Duke, under our financial education resources tab, there is a link to LinkedIn Learning's site. If you've ever looked at Coursera, it's really similar. Duke has a partnership with LinkedIn, and they have some professional development courses that are free to you as a student. They have a fantastic course on the foundations of investing and really, how is it all involved? What's a stock? What's a bond? What do you think about when you're learning for investing for the first time? The module, again, is really well done, lots of great resources. So that's another one. Highly recommend if you don't have an opportunity to swing by our office, but you still want to do some of that learning, go through those resources in the financial education platforms. You'll find a lot of really good information as well.
Okay, and a student just wants the link and we can send that to you.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. All right, so we're over time now, but thank you so much, Anna. This has been really, really helpful and interesting and informative. And so again, right, it was just such a terrific resource to use, and lots of just good advice there. So some of this, you might not know what to do with all of it yet, but I promise you it will be pertinent to you pretty soon as you get on.